Hello all, Foxing here. There seems to be a lot of confusion surrounding legendary items in Legion, and I'm going to try and help shed some light on the issue. First off, this opinion and viewpoint comes from someone who has both been a casual raider and hardcore for years. Grove Walkers. These provide an insane amount of healing. The name suggests that they're meant for a bear tank, but they have no restriction to who can get them or equip them as of right now. There are many huge problems to these boots. Not only are they powerful for a tank to be wearing them, and getting 500,000 health every 3 seconds, as the affix suggests, but imagine an entire raid wearing them. There wouldn't be a need for healers outside of one tank healer, as the entire raid would be getting healed to roughly full every 3 seconds. I hope you can somewhat see how powerful this item is. The 5% buff to your main stat for wearing all plate mail or leather, which would be granted wearing these, would be worth not having if you could cut 3 to 4 healers in a raid. The next item only makes it worse to suggest some raids having just one healer. Soul Weave. When you heal someone, you give them a buff that if they die with this buff on them, will suffer 20% of your mana instead of dying. This item can be extremely abusive. Not only can you prevent many deaths that save you a battle res, but mechanics that shouldn't be soakable by one person by simply giving up 20% of your mana. This item is meant for healers only, but can be equipped by a paladin class. Rather than just holy, you can die 5 times in a very quick succession as a prot paladin before actually dying with this equipped. The previous legendary Grove Walkers, we talked about how maybe an entire raid would be wearing them to get rid of healers besides one tank healing, which could easily end up being a Disc Priest. They can heal just the tanks with Atonement and keep that buff on them, so if the tank does die for the boots not healing enough, the priest's mana will suffer instead of them actually dying. And I say Disc Priest because Atonement can provide single target healing to just the tanks and provide shielding and damage. Start to see how these items can be a problem. Now let's talk about one of the DPS legendaries. Hidden Master's Forbidden Hand Wraps. In short, Touch of Death hits every 30 seconds instead of on a 3-minute cooldown. For those of you who don't know what Touch of Death is or will be in Legion, it's an 8-second debuff that after it expires will do damage equal to the monk's maximum health, and in the artifact trait, this will be buffed by how much damage you do in that 8-second debuff timer. Now, this can either go one of two ways. Either the new Windwalker Monk's damage is focused solely around the reoccurring Touch of Death, with shit DPS outside of it, and these gloves become mandatory, and if you're a Windwalker, you won't have a raid spot if you're missing them. The second option is worse than the first one. Touch of Death dealing its damage every 30 seconds means on very long fights, such as Mythic Banneroth or Archimonde, just one spell will be doing an ass load of damage, without Windwalker's overall DPS suffering if they don't have this item. To help you understand how much an ass load is, let's use Mythic Banneroth and current health pools for a reference. Players at the moment have no problem getting roughly 500,000 health, so Touch of Death will do roughly 500,000 damage pre-artifact trait. Mythic Banneroth is probably the longest fight in Hellfire Citadel and can last easily over 10 minutes. This means over the course of a 10-minute fight, Touch of Death will have gone off roughly 20 times, doing 10 million damage. One spell, guys. Keep that in mind. 10 million damage on a boss that has 400 million health. Now let's take that a step further and say 15 DPS are now Windwalkers. 2 tanks, 3 healers, 15 Windwalkers. Now that's 150 million damage from one spell. Nearly half of the boss's health bar is now being dealt from the effect of one item changing one spell. This is why most raiders, and myself included, are in an uproar about these items. I could talk about more items such as the Fire Mage's ones being mandatory as well, but right now I just wanted to go over the 3 big ones. If you think raiders are getting upset that they don't want legendary items being added to the game because non-raider casuals can get good items, then hopefully now you can see why it's not about raiders being elitist, it's about these items being absolutely bonkers and game breaking. I hope this video helps. Peace.